Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Rundown. I'm Sunny Galt. I'm a messenger with United Network News, and we are the news division of United Network. And we're here to bring you the real news. Our network releases a lot of content throughout the week that includes in-depth news coverage, and this is told through local stories by our field messengers. We, as a news team, kind of go more in-depth with some stories, and we bring those to you. We talk about the restoration of our planet and how we're creating what we call the new Earth. And we have updates from the Global Intelligence Agency as to what's really happening here on this planet in the ultimate battle of good versus evil. If you want more information about who we are, what we do, visit our website, unitednetwork.earth. So this is a week in review podcast. I take the stories that we've covered over the last week, because like I said, there's a lot of content that comes out. You may have missed something. So this podcast is a great way to catch up on stories you may have missed, or perhaps you just want to share UNN with other people. When we release our content, it goes out to our members first, and then a week later it is uploaded to YouTube, and Rumble is the other side. I forgot it for a second. So if you do want to catch that information and you're not yet a member, you can do that. You can just listen to it or watch it a week later. With anything we put out there, we always encourage you guys to think critically and to ask questions. So that could be hopping on our community, on our app, and asking people other questions just for clarification. It could be doing your own research online, whatever you need to do in order to help you draw your own conclusions. And then when you figure something out, share it with other people. That's how we're going to spread the information and share the truth with others. The only announcement that I have today for you guys is that I'm actually recording about a day later. So I'm recording on a Sunday instead of a Saturday, but it's still the weekend. You know, I just like to keep you guys on your toes. So let's get to it. Here is the rundown of stories you may have missed this week on UNN. All right, let's kick things off with our awesome field messengers. These are everyday people who want to make a difference in the world. And we think one of the best ways to do that at this time is to share what's really going on in your community. We have to break down the misinformation, the disinformation out there, and really start talking to each other again. There's a lot of preconceived notions and ideas that the media has put in our heads. So let's start sharing what's really going on, and this is one way we're going to change the world together. All right, Susan kicks off our first report, and she is out of Sweden, which happens to be where this year's Bilderberg meeting is. Now, if you're unfamiliar, you could go down a huge rabbit hole with this one, guys, but it was started, at least what they tell us, it was started in 1954. It's an exclusive annual gathering of quote-unquote top leaders and experts from politics, business, academia, media, and finance across Europe and North America. And this year was in Sweden. In fact, we believe, again, information they give us, it's the 71st annual, and about 121 people met to discuss the state of affairs of the world and how they're going to keep controlling us, basically. Now, who knows if it was really 121 people, because, again, everything is so secretive, but, you know, nothing bad can happen under the guise of secrecy, right? Wink, wink, nod, nod. But thank you, Susan. This was right in your backyard. And again, we're just breaking down what's going on, and you reported on what's happening literally in your community. All right, Amy out of New Jersey also wants to dispel some rumors out there regarding some things that are happening in her area. And she is talking about the Newark airport. So apparently there have been some delays there, cancellations, and media outlets are reporting various blackouts. There's just a lot of people, saying certain things are going on. So Amy found out what was really happening. And one of the things that she said is that United Airlines specifically was cutting a lot of their flights. And there were some rumors as to why that was going on. She found out that was due to repairs. Specifically, you know how in airports, different airlines have different areas of the airport. Well, if your area is under repair, or there's some construction or whatever going on, you're probably going to have some flights cut. So we found out that's what was going on there for one of the runways. There was also some misinformation, I will say, given out about air traffic controllers allegedly walking off the job. Amy found out that that's not exactly what happened. There were 4 different air traffic controllers that quit, but this stemmed more from their job being relocated and them not being super happy with how all that went down. Okay, so again, there's things that mainstream media tells us that isn't necessarily true, and who knows what their motives are, but a lot of it's fear-based. So anytime we can cut down on that fear, we're doing good. Okay, Kazuki from Japan takes us to, oh my goodness, this is a tough one to pronounce, you guys. Amano Hashidari is how I'm going to say it. And this is one of Japan's most breathtaking natural wonders. It's a really cool destination. You really got to watch the video for this. But essentially, it is a very narrow sandbar, is what it kind of looks like. There's a lot of mythology behind it. It's not just sand, by the way, but there's beautiful trees on it. And it kind of connects these, different areas of land. And it makes you wonder, how did this happen? So I mentioned mythology, and in Japanese mythology, they say it looks like a dragon that's just kind of lying down. So who knows how this stuff happens, but very interesting to see different places in the world. Emma from Spain tells us more about a potato shortage happening in the Canary Islands, and this is due to a poor harvest. She says they had a really warm season where 80% of their potatoes failed, and then they were also having challenges with imports from the UK due to the red beetle. Now, she says Spain has since approved imports from the UK, so they've been able to work that out, and they're hoping that this resolves their situation. CJ out of New Hampshire gives us a really cool lemon hack for any lemon lovers out there. I'm one of them. Did you know you can extend the life of your lemons? So it's real easy to do. In fact, you can use them for cleaning. But what CJ shows us is she put whole lemons in a jar with filtered water, and it was a pretty big jar, like whole lemons, right? And then you put the top on, and she says it can last twice as long. So her lemons, she says, last, a couple weeks if she puts them in the fridge. This may last a full month if you put them in these jars. And then, and thanks for the shout out, by the way, CJ, we did a story, this was several months ago, about not wasting different food items when you use them. And so what she does with her lemons is the water that it sits in is pretty good lemon water. Now, she doesn't drink it. She actually uses it as a cleaning solution. She combines it with borax, and she actually shows how she cleans her stove with it. And this is the best part, you guys. She uses the remaining lemon, which imagine like a lemon cut in half. She uses that lemon as a scrubber for her stove. I thought that was fantastic. All right, Akira from Japan takes us to the Kanda Festival. It's held in Tokyo, and it is recognized as one of the 3 great Edo festivals. Now, Edo is the ancient name for Tokyo. And this whole cultural event highlights the rich traditions of the region. And I did a little bit of reading up on this afterward, and it said it's really become more of a celebration for the wealth and good fortune of the people. And so it's a beautiful, look like a procession of people that he shows us. They were actually holding these beautiful portable shrines. He said there were over 200 portable shrines. And here's another interesting thing about this event. It only takes place in odd numbered years. Interesting. Ade from Nigeria takes us to a meeting, essentially. A group of people got together in Nigeria. They had some really innovative products, and they believe that their products can provide jobs, it can improve health, and it's overall contributing to Nigeria's larger restoration goals. So this is a great example of, even before funding is available for projects, people moving forward with the restoration of our planet. And in this case, there were a couple different companies. I think one represented a really special organic flour. There was a spice company, but they do a lot more than that, right? They're really about rebuilding their economy and helping humanity. Janie from England talks about World Bee Day, which happened back in May, and she's from Manchester, England. At least that's where her report is from. And she talks about the local hives at Heaton Park, which is in Manchester. She explores the history of the place, talks about why bees are so important for our planet. And it was really cool. You know, they had a lot of stuff for kids. There were books, there were bee costumes, lots of bee decorations, lots of information on beekeeping, a little shop there if you wanted to purchase things like honey and other products as well. Chukwudi Kingsley out of Nigeria talks about a local community member in southeastern Nigeria who has launched a project to make clean water accessible. And he basically tells us this whole story. So it was a guy from the area who came back. And this project, I believe he said, was completed in 2021. But it involves reservoir tanks. There's solar panels to help pump the water, just because electricity is hit or miss there. And really, this has been a game changer for the community. Again, people stepping up with whatever resources they have to help with the restoration of our planet. And as a result, the people there are very excited and grateful. And finally, Susan out of Sweden, another report from Susan. She's all over the place. I love it. Takes us to the rock fields in Åland. It is the second largest island in Sweden. It's a beautiful place in the Baltic Sea with a unique limestone landscape. So this is another one of those videos you really need to check out to do it justice. But these incredible fossils are captured in the stone because it's more of a soft stone. She says they are everywhere. She loves to go check them out. But these rocks, okay, when I say rocks, it's RAUKS. So basically the limestone in this area, it's not just a solid stone, okay? Think of like little stumps, if you will, of limestone. These are called rocks. They're basically stacks of limestone rocks. And it's just really cool to see how it forms here and learn a little bit more about the people and how they really enjoy this area. Now it's time for some of the in-depth stories the team and I worked on for you guys this week. We're going to kick things off in Kenya. Kenya's New Persons with Disabilities Act 2025 marks a major milestone in turning constitutional rights into practical inclusion, tackling long-standing challenges like stigma, poor accessibility, and limited opportunities for people with disabilities. While previous laws and Kenya's ratification of the UN Convention brought recognition, change on the ground has been slow. Unemployment rates remain double the national average, schools and transport often exclude, and underreporting hides the true scale of need. The new law broadens the definition of disability, mandates inclusion in schools, workplaces, and public services, and bans discrimination. Here's a little bit more about what this law includes.
A few of the highlights of the bill, some of them being things like incentives for people who employ people with disabilities. You get a percentage of tax incentives as an employer if you are able to accommodate or refurbish or retrofit your building or your workplace for people with disabilities. You also get tax exemption. I've added the retirement to 65 from 60 because you'll find that people with disabilities, we get late into school because of all the barriers, which means that we are late into employment because of the same barriers. And therefore, if we stop at 60, we haven't really had that many years of actual, meaningful employment. So that was something that came out really strongly in stakeholder engagement.
Which sounds good, but experts stress that real progress depends on strong government commitment, adequate funding, local enforcement, and public awareness. Around the world, abandoned houses in shrinking towns are being turned into affordable opportunities for people seeking a fresh start or a unique investment, with countries from Europe to Asia offering incredible deals to revive local economies. In Europe, villages in France, Croatia, Ireland, and Italy are selling homes for as little as €1 or offering generous grants. But buyers must commit to living there and renovating within strict timelines.
Here's the truth behind that €1 price tag. First, yes, the homes are legally sold for €1. That part is real. But you're not just buying a house. You're taking on a full-blown restoration project. Most of these properties have been abandoned for decades. No plumbing, no electricity, collapsed roofs, cracked walls. And once you buy it, you're required to renovate within a strict timeline. In many towns, you must present a renovation plan, start construction within 3 to 6 months, and complete it within 2 to 3 years. And if you don't, you lose the property and the deposit.
There are some other challenges like isolation, limited services, and paperwork, so experts urge potential buyers to research local requirements, visas, taxes, and lifestyle differences before jumping in. Every June, Pride Month begins with parades, rainbow flags, and celebrations honoring the LGBTQ+ community's history and their ongoing fight for equality. Over decades, Pride events grew from protest marches to major festivals supported by widespread public backing and corporate sponsorship, alongside legal milestones like marriage equality and expanded workplace protections. However, this year, organizers in cities like San Francisco, New York, and D.C. face steep budget shortfalls as big brands scale back funding due to shifting politics and legal risks tied to diversity programs. Corporate support has dropped about 60% since last year.
For 45 years, St. Louis has celebrated Pride with a free festival. This year, that's changing. Pride Fest goers will have to pay a $10 entry fee because the organization has lost more than $150,000 in corporate sponsorships, including St. Louis headquartered Anheuser-Busch, which pulled its support after a 30-year partnership.
It was simply a quote on a phone call that was, we no longer see the value in the relationship, end quote. And that was all we got.
We've reached out to Anheuser-Busch for comment, but haven't heard back. It's not the only brand scaling back. According to a survey of more than 200 corporate executives by Gravity Research, 39% plan to do the same this year.
Despite this, local communities are stepping up through grassroots donations, proving that while sponsorship helps, the true spirit of Pride lies in people coming together to celebrate love, identity, and resilience, with nearly 100 U.S. cities and dozens more worldwide, keeping the tradition alive. Denmark has officially set the highest retirement age in Europe with a new law raising it to 70 by 2040, following a policy that links retirement age to life expectancy to keep the pension system sustainable as people live longer. While the current age is 67, it will gradually climb in the coming years, sparking protests and debate over fairness, especially for those in physically demanding jobs. Supporters argue it's necessary to balance the growing number of retirees with fewer young workers, while incentives like tax-free bonuses and flexible work options encourage older Danes to stay employed longer.
Denmark is taking the lead in Europe, not just in a way everyone celebrates. Across Europe, governments are pushing retirement ages higher, but Denmark is set to surpass its neighbors with the highest threshold by far, increasing it from the current 67 to 70 by 2040. It will apply to anyone born in or after 1971 and make Danes the oldest retirees on the continent. The policy links pensions to life expectancy, a reform originally adopted in 2006. The logic is simple. As people live longer, they should work longer too.
However, the Prime Minister recently signaled that automatic increases may not continue indefinitely, acknowledging the need to weigh economic pressures against people's well-being, leaving Denmark's retirement age debate far from settled. Near-death experiences, sometimes they're called NDEs, they captivate people worldwide with vivid accounts of leaving the body, traveling through tunnels, seeing bright lights, and feeling deep peace or accessing hidden knowledge. Phenomena recorded since ancient times, but popularized in modern culture by Dr. Raymond Moody's 1975 book, Life After Life. Well, today's scientists and doctors study NDEs more seriously, with recent research showing surprising brain activity and clear memories even after cardiac arrest, raising questions about consciousness at the edge of death.
There are roughly 900 scholarly studies of near-death experiences published in scientific and medical journals over the last 40 years. Researchers have found that there is no alternative explanations that can fully explain them away. In fact, there are many powerful cases where there's corroboration. In other words, people are clinically dead, and yet their spirit lives on, and they see or hear things they otherwise would be incapable of seeing or hearing. For example, a 7-year-old girl named Katie was found floating face down in a YMCA swimming pool. She had no measurable brainwaves activity. She had no heartbeat. She was hooked up to an artificial lung to keep her breathing. But somehow she made a miraculous recovery after just 3 days. And she astounded doctors by saying she'd been conscious the whole time.
While skeptics look for neurological explanations, countless personal stories keep the mystery alive. Inspiring books, documentaries, and communities dedicated to exploring what these extraordinary glimpses might reveal about life, death, and what could lie beyond. Small farms across the United States are struggling to stay afloat as they grapple with big chain pricing that doesn't cover their higher costs. Regulations geared towards large-scale agriculture and challenges like limited supply and seasonal availability that make competing with industrial farms tough. Since 2012, the country has lost 13% of its small farms, yet the growing Buy Local movement offers hope. Spending at farm stores and innovative farm shops like Argus Farm Stop in Michigan, which sources fresh food from nearby farms year-round, well, that has doubled, proving shoppers value knowing where their food comes from.
Even if just 10 families a year voted with their dollar at my farm, that would just take me to the next level. I used to think that for me to be successfully financially, I would need to reach 1,000 people and I would need 1,000 customers to buy my product. But really, when it comes down to it, I need 10 to 20 families to keep buying from me. I don't need to sell to 20 million people across the United States. I need local families to say, I see what you're doing. I like your product. I want to support you, but I want to keep supporting you time after time after time.
These farm stops bridge the gap between farmers markets and grocery stores, giving more profit directly to farmers and strengthening local food systems. By choosing local produce, consumers help small farms survive, keep communities connected to fresh food, and boost local economies, making every purchase a meaningful investment in the future of sustainable farming. Recent cuts to disability benefits in the UK are sparking outrage and deep concern as millions who rely on this financial support to cover everyday necessities now face stricter rules, reduced payments, and greater uncertainty about their future. Despite a surge in claims, up 30% for DLA and PIP, and 55% for health-related universal credit since 2019, the government plans to slash 5 billion euros in benefits by 2030. It's the largest reduction on record.
When the services that we need, the vital services, are not receiving the funding that they need, of course it's going to have an impact on people's mental health. I don't want to wear resilience as a badge of honour, but it's really hard being a disabled person in the UK. It's such a hostile place to be. Okay. The government are calling us benefit cheats and work shy, saying we don't pay tax, whatever. I've worked since I was 16. That was after being rejected from over 100 job applications. I can work. I want to work. I want to contribute to society.
Critics argue this approach unfairly targets vulnerable people, with estimates suggesting 3.8 million disabled individuals could lose up to 60% of their income, forcing many into poverty and making it harder to stay employed. While Parliament debates the bill this summer, countless disabled people remain anxious about what these sweeping cuts mean for their livelihoods and independence. A new report by the Balkan Investigative Reporting Network, also referred to as BURN, reveals that surveillance technologies in the Western Balkans, such as biometric data tracking, facial recognition, and digital censorship, are increasingly used to suppress dissent and control information, often without sufficient legal safeguards. From Albania's camera-heavy smart city initiatives and TikTok ban to Montenegro's secretive facial recognition software and Serbia's reported use of Pegasus spyware against journalists and activists, the region faces mounting threats to privacy, press freedom, and civil liberties.
An Amnesty International report entitled Serbia, a Digital Prison, Surveillance and the Suspension of Civil Society in Serbia notes that the government is employing Pegasus software, notorious Israeli spyware used by many states the world over. The country also developed its own offering, while some came from Norway.
Serbia developed software called Novi Spy. It is not so sophisticated because police have to take phone away from you so that they can install the program. But it's good because it can track everything that's on the phone, even the draft message which are never sent.
The pitch is always that it's supposed to be used to track terrorists, but activists and journalists are mostly the target.
While many countries have laws aligning with EU standards, enforcement remains weak and political interference is growing. The report warns unchecked surveillance and poor oversight are eroding democratic space, and it calls for greater transparency, stronger legal protections, and support for independent journalism to ensure human rights are respected across the region. Well, gardening isn't just about pretty flowers and fresh vegetables, although that's all great. It's a surprisingly powerful way to boost mental well-being and keep the brain healthy. Research shows spending time in the garden can lower stress, improve focus, and even reduce the risk of dementia by up to 36% in older adults. Programs like Thrive in the UK help people with dementia reconnect with nature, while structured horticultural therapy supports veterans with PTSD and individuals coping with anxiety. Here's Cynthia, who's participated in Thrive.
Coming to Thrive, what I feel that by meeting other people and socializing with other people, sometimes you may have things bothering you that you don't even realize. And by having that conversation with other people, you may find a solution without even asking a question. At the end of the session, I feel a little tired, but quite happy, invigorated, and that I've learned something new. I think Thrive offers a lot of opportunities depending on what you want from it. I like coming to Thrive for 3 points: the people, the opportunities, and the learning that I get from it.
By engaging the senses, stimulating problem solving, and providing gentle physical activity, gardening strengthens neural pathways and fosters a sense of calm and purpose. So whether you have a big backyard or just a few pots on a balcony, tending to plants can help you grow a sharper, more resilient mind, one seed at a time. Now it's time for some highlights from this week's Global Intelligence Agency reports. And Kimberly Gogan is the head of the GIA. She comes on and she usually does some updates for us throughout the week. And this week we've got 2 updates, but they're both pretty long. The one she gave last Sunday, so if you recall on last week's podcast, I said Kim is expected to come out with a report on Sunday, and I would share that with you this week. So we've got a long report on Sunday. I do encourage you guys to actually listen to the report, because what I can share with you on the podcast, just for time's sake, and the fact that it some of this stuff is just really, really detailed. Like, it was really difficult for me to edit down some of these sound bites this week. So go back and listen to the report, whether you listen to it right away because you're a member or you listen to it and watch it on YouTube and Rumble. Go back and do that. There is a lot in the media right now about our interactions, I guess I shouldn't say are, from the U.S. perspective, okay? The U.S.'s perspective of what's going on in Iran, and specifically between us, Iran, and Israel. I feel like there's this triangle, right, going on right now. Well, what we know and what we have been shown throughout the years is whatever mainstream media tells you, and even alternative media, these are controlled narratives. Even the people that have the best heart in alternative media, most of them are being controlled, okay? So whatever the news, quote unquote, is giving you right now, that's not necessarily the case. And Kim does go through and breaks down some of the big news items with regard to this conflict with Iran and what's going on. Things like these missiles that apparently are going into these bunkers. They're calling them bunker busters. Kind of silly, but okay, that's what they're talking about now. It's really just not what they say. Okay, so if you really want all the details, I do encourage you to check out the full report. The part that I want to share with you today is just a smaller soundbite about what they're actually doing over there. What is this whole thing really about? Because we know they want to cause World War III, but is there something else going on here? Because there's always more of an esoteric approach to this. The operatives that are leading this, the secret space program, they have more information about how the world really works, okay? And in this case, they were actually looking for gateways. So here's Kim with more.
The focus here for the deep state, whether the Pentagon knows it or not, they basically were looking for a gateway which existed in Iran. And when they lost sight of that gateway and lost the ability to even see, let alone access said gateways, they went there in attempts to try to take control of it. Now, there was a lot of other things that happened this week and over the last 2 weeks over there in the Middle East, which indicated this was definitely a planned event, or at least a backup plan for what the deep state was hoping to achieve on the 20th of June, the solstice. They also told a lot of their embassies in the area to evacuate, not only in Iran, but also in Iraq and in other surrounding countries in preparation for World War III. In Iran, the imam, which is kind of like the Islamic Pope, I guess you would say, to kind of make it relative to what you may or may not know about Islam, was actually rushed to Russia a few days prior, allegedly for treatment, and he wasn't doing very well. So he actually named 3 different possible successors to this position. In reality, the real Khomeini died about 2 to 3 years ago, trying to perform some kind of ceremony in Belarus. However, in the public eye, they were planning on announcing his death on also the 20th of June. This was an agreement, and trust me, it's an agreement with the United States and the rest of the deep state friends and family network around the world. But it was an agreement with the United States for this to happen, and they intended to replace this imam with an American version, I should say, of the imam. Khomeini is definitely, and was the original one anyway, was a member of the Green Dragon family, if not the head of the Green Dragon family, worked very closely with the other dragons in China and the UK and other places. They were definitely installing the dragon way of doing things throughout the Middle East and the Islamic community, especially the Shia community. clearly what we have here is a bunch of operatives that are trained in politics, coups and economic assassinations, maybe partway, and they're used to getting a lot of help, but they just don't realize it. They think they do these things all on their own. Therefore, they keep trying to stage these coups and, in Syria and other locations in the world. And, of course, the Vatican was replaced with an American Pope. Well, not the Vatican, but the Pope position was replaced with an American Pope, and that is definitely a Pope that is quite tight with the Trump operatives, let's just say. So tight, probably is one. And they intend to do the same thing here with this other religion. See, they believe that if they can gain control over the leadership of every country, and if they gain control over every religion, that would make them the most powerful people in the world. Again, let us not forget, they are trying to install their new world, one world government with them at the helm.
Now, like most weeks and weekends, the deep state also believed that they were about to become the guardians of Earth, which is another title that Kim currently holds. Now, that didn't happen, but that didn't stop them from believing it was going to happen, from making promises to other people, and that's kind of what perpetuated what you're seeing play out in the Middle East right now. So I want to play another soundbite from Kim talking about how the deep state thought they were going to become guardians. What was it? Because usually this is based on some legitimate information. They're just not clued in as to how everything works and why it will not work in their favor, at least not anymore. So Kim talks about the growth rate of development and how it's related to humans, and how the deep state thought that because they were causing this chaos in the Middle East, that this could affect the humans' growth rate of development. Take a listen.
The growth rate of development of humanity, or the God program, relates to many different factors of, is humanity able to take care of themselves? So part of the former Guardians plan was to ensure that humans could not take care of themselves, and to prove it. There have been various deep state members that have said that if it wasn't for the Illuminati or the Order of the Black Sun or Order of the Dragon, insert name here, from country here and there. I've heard this from Iranians. I've heard this from various members around the world in my travels over the years, that all of humanity would kill each other. Now, this was based on a program called the Growth Rate of Development, and a gross overestimate of the powers of folks that held the position of Marduk. The reason why I say that, because in February of 2016, I discovered this little part of the alpha system, which was also part of the omniversal simulation, that it wasn't actually reading humanity right. Meaning, data in, data out is what an AI is all about. I rhymed. Didn't mean to. But the data collection of any kind of analysis is critical to the success of the analysis. The same thing goes for human beings. Human beings take a bunch of information in, and most of us then do this strange thing the deep state apparently cannot do, which is think. We take all the information in, and we make a decision, and we go forward in that direction because of that decision. Now, the deep state has had access to part of these programs for a long time, which is why they feel that humanity would kill each other if it wasn't for them. And this is what they were told by their former captors. I'm not even going to call them leaders. I'm going to call them their captors. They just don't realize it. So I took a look at this program and this part of the system, and I did an analysis back in February of 2016. It's been a long time. And what I came to the understanding about this analysis is the alpha system was never permitted to fully understand all of humanity. The alpha system was only registering the deeds, the work, the current mental status, spiritual status, and physical status of the deep state. For that reason, the alpha system would be under the impression that we would definitely need a guardian, because without a guardian, we would kill ourselves. The data was wrong. They were assessing less than 10% of humanity, and it was not permissible for it to assess the rest of us on the daily. Why? Because in the war of simulated good and evil, we would have won. We would have won a long time ago. We would have tripped the simulator system and not had a simulation on this planet. Now, folks that have held the position of Marduk and others on this planet that had dominion here for a long, long time would have lost. This was not acceptable to those beings. Therefore, they had to keep the simulation going. Now, in 2016, I took the governor off, and I started letting Alpha assimilate all of humanity, meaning it was not just analyzing the deep state. We put everyone into it. So it took a few years, in this case about 3 or 4, before I then had the ability to transfer out of the Alpha system with the intention of helping humanity. The simulator blocks me. That's basically one part of the revelation that we've had in the last few days. The simulation would block it. Now, the simulation wants to make sure that humanity doesn't live in abundance and happiness and full of options on how to care for this vessel of ours we call our body, and our mind and our soul and our spirituality. It also did not want anyone anywhere to receive any direct communication with Source. It's kind of like when I came here in this particular case. Every person that I talk to in my, I call it a Rolodex, but in my contact list, I guess these days is what you would call it, showing my age there a little bit, where they tried to divide us. So if anybody came here to visit, they would sit down and talk with them and tell them, hey, you don't want to talk to her. She's doing this, she's doing that, And they had divided relationships I had with people for 30 to 40 years at that point, since, that I had since I was a young child, that I had maintained over the years. They try to force themselves into a position where everyone but them is evil. They are the good guys, and therefore they will be your only source of intelligence, information, so you will make decisions based on what they want you to make. Well, the simulator does the same thing. God forbid you have access to all the wisdom in the omniverse. That would be a definite no-no simulation-wise. So based on the original assessment of humans and the information going to said humans, by these particular sectors, remember, it was only reading at the time the activities of the deep state, the murderers, the pedophiles, the killers, the carnivores, the people who eat people, the people who drink adrenochrome, the people who eat their own, so to speak, the people that create wars, the people that do all of those things. So this was a purely human assessment. It had nothing to do with the players in the game that we've discussed in the past, and it had nothing to do with the fallen ones. This was purely a human assessment. So by human standards, the deep state, we know, in the past would receive orders from Marduk, whoever held that position, possibly the Enki position or the Enlil position, which technically were all AI-generated positions anyway of the simulation. Occasionally, you'd have a being or two enter in and out of the simulation in days past. Some of those beings would be, you know, some of the folks from the neutral area, which were also not wholly human anymore either, such as the Germanic tribes and others, you know, and everybody thinks they're superior to one another. These are the superior bloodlines, right? They are the chosen ones for aliens to talk to. Well, hate to break it to you, deep state, but you've been talking to a pre-programmed AI, which was programmed out of ego. Talk about that in a second. So when it does the assessment, now the people in the assessment or in the simulation we know as Marduk as an example, and the parents as another example, would pass down information through to the deep state to make sure that they continued to create wars constantly. It wasn't just about being ground command, it was about the simulation, grief, strife, killing. Now remember, it's only assessing their particular daily activities. It's not assessing ours at this point. They would also ensure that governments, you know, power, control, ego, money would flow. Lots and lots of debt would flow to them, known as money. They would get the nicest houses, the nicest cars, and all of the rewards for keeping the simulation in the belief that humans were evil and we would kill each other. Until, well, that was tripped in February of 2016. So remember, everything works in cycles of 9. Whether it's 9,000 years, 9 years, or otherwise. And the system has been assessing you correctly for about 9 years. It's been looking at all the humans. So the deep state believes that by creating this war, they may or may not be under the impression that the growth rate of development of humanity can be altered by their activities. Now, they need it in their mind, a really good world war, because they feel, if they are aware of the simulation or not, and I know that some are, probably to some degree anyway, the growth rate of development simulation reads all of humanity. Now, remember the old saying, see, these are things that they don't count on because they do things out of ego and complete and total lack of common sense. Someone has been telling them what to do every day of their life since the day that they were born until the last few years, which is quite obvious. So they believe if they start this world war, that they can reinforce the simulation will come back, and then will give them, because they plan on being the guardian, which some AI system told them that they would be, that they can then take over the world. Sounds lovely, you know, if you're the deep state. But behind the scenes, since 2016, 9 full years by February, the simulator has realized that humans are not evil, because it's looking at everyone now. It's looking at everything everyone is doing, and it's extremely important to understand that everything that you are doing and have done for the last several years has gotten us to the point that we're at today. So they planned that this whole simulation situation was going to turn around in their favor by the 20th. They told all their world government people for their participation, you know, in fear and, you know, all of the types of things that they were putting out, that they would be able to trip the system, but they were unaware, perhaps because Omega didn't have a change in the growth rate of development system of a simulation. But Alpha certainly did. Perhaps this was hidden from them because they never had access to Alpha. They only had access to Omega. But in the simulator of the Omniverse, these structures rapidly started breaking down.
And these structures continue to break down, which, as you guys know, when one thing breaks down, sometimes it triggers something else to happen. So that's a little bit of a teaser. If you want to find out as of Sunday what Kim was dealing with, make sure you check out Sunday's report. Okay, then Kim also did another report on Wednesday where we continue to talk about simulations, about this war we're fighting, how it's going to be won by attrition, which means who can hold out the longest. And the deep state is losing a lot of their toys and a lot of their people very, very quickly. Now, these simulations, you may wonder, why all these simulations? What is going on here? Well, they have to control you. Why? Because they're trying to control your soul. They can't own your soul. Your soul always belongs to God, Source, the creator of the universe. However, they have tried to control it since the beginning of time, literally. So I want to play one final soundbite for you guys, and this is Kim talking about the simulations and their connection to your souls and why souls are so important for these beings to control everything.
We've come to the conclusion that souls are very, very important to these non-humans. Really, really important. And when you get down to the base root level of simulations, so to speak, and the ultimate importance of souls is actually with Source and the dark side of Source. Now, other beings started this war. And it is truly a war for your soul. It's a war for the souls of planets. It's the war for the souls of beings. It's the war for souls. Basically, the first beings outside of Earth in all of creation were Lucifer and Lucerne. And we all know the story about Lucifer, and we've talked about this before, but Lucifer was the one that decided that he could overthrow Source. He could do all of these other things. He, sided with Dark Source, and he chose his side. Lucerne, at the time, chose Source. And together, they created the ultimate weapon against Source, which was the very first simulation in existence. And that simulation allowed them to fight against all of creation. You see, because there were rules to this game for the ownership of your soul. Not the ownership per se, but the ownership of Source, first of all, or the control of Source, and also the control of Source's creations, aka your soul. But there are rules. Some of the rules were portrayed to me by Enki and Enlil. Enlil once told me that they cannot interfere with the affairs of Earth. They can only influence. Meaning, they cannot, kill a bunch of humans, allegedly. They cannot do any kind of interference in the great game. They can only convince you that it's a good idea for your soul to go dark. In your case, I assume most of the people listening to this is, don't want that. Now, this made a whole lot of sense to me. I'm like, okay, now I'm replaying all these conversations for the last couple of days because I'm fighting against consciousness constructs created by the very beings I used to talk to. Not all of them, but this particular one. And I needed to understand how they became realm owners. We've talked about that about a year ago, and how this all came into play to what's happening on Earth right now, this transition period, sealing of the fate, which became really important recently, and what this all means. And I knew one thing for sure. Number one, the simulation that I was fighting most recently was definitely Marduk's. So I could see his personality. I knew it was his consciousness construct. Marduk has the last remaining simulation. The original simulation was actually called Solomon. How's that for interesting? The one between Lucifer and Lucerne was called Solomon. No direct relation to the crazy king of Israel, but it was the ultimate simulation. Now, here's why Earth was so important in this war. Because human beings actually exist in all the densities up and all the densities down, just as Earth exists in all the densities up and all the densities down. Technically, you could say that if you get Earth, this is like, all the souls for the price of one. So if you could control Earth and all the densities up and all the densities down and all the humans on Earth and all of Earth's inhabitants and the sun and what was our moon, then you could control the entire omniverse. Because you get 9 realms up, 9 realms down, plus all the zeros and all the density dimensions in between. You now get them all. So one human soul is the equivalent of an entire density's worth of souls. You get souls density 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 down. And because Earth core, as we talked about in our last news, was sunken down to 0, Earth's soul, Tiamat, Earth, a part of Earth, was sunken into that density, then now it allowed 0 to control them all because it didn't penetrate the soul of Earth. However, it used the soul of Earth. It was able to surround it, overlay it, just like it does with humans. So when they say owning the souls is really important, they really mean it. Remember, you have the power. You do. You are the hottest commodity on this planet. You are the cutest girl and boy in school. You are it. Every single last one of you listening to this, you are it. And I am here to tell you, you have the right to say no. Off limits. You will stay with Source. Of course, if you don't want to, that's okay too. I mean, that's not my business. But you have the right to say no. They cannot take your soul. Now, these simulations in the course of the next couple of days, now that we've figured out how they operate, why they're operating the way they're operating, they will go away. But until that time, when you hear those annoying frequencies, when people around you, because if they can't get to you, they're going to get to people around you. They're going to try to inflict guilt unintentionally. I'm not going to say that, but unintentionally. Some people are more influenced than others, or easier to influence than others on a body level and on a mind level. So remember that. Just remember you have the power and the control to say no. You have the right to say no to the simulation.
So now we have our marching orders, guys. If you haven't already, on a spiritual level, said no to the simulation, now would be a fantastic time to do it. And I love when Kim shares things that we can do, tangible things that we can do to help her in this whole process. And it's a process that we all believe is about to end and end in our favor. So these are very exciting times. All right, I encourage you guys, please check out that report on Sunday from Kim. Again, it's very long. She brings out the whiteboard. It's a lot more detailed, as well as the Wednesday report. I just gave you the highlights. For more information about who we are and what we do, check out our website, unitednetwork.earth. And if you decide to become a member, that will give you access to all of our content the moment we release it, including our complete news updates, our New Earth interviews, complete reports from the GIA, not just highlights, and all things restoration. Thanks so much for being with us today, you guys. I appreciate all of you. This is The Rundown, and I'm Sunny Galt for United Network News, signing off.